Welcome back to page 121. Today I'm going to take a look at Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. This is module G1 of the Against the Giants series, published in the Against the Giants was published in 81. The Steading itself was published in 1978. So we're going to take a look at part one of this, which is Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, and a little bit of history of how I've run it and some of the fun things that my players end up doing with it. I also want to announce that I'm starting a Patreon. I'm hoping that folks will be able to help out a little bit, keep the channel going, keep me able to do these as much as I do. Believe it or not, these little videos do take a lot of time. The video itself may be 10 or 12 minutes long, but the prep is a lot longer than that. And I'm hoping to be able to generate a little bit of a budget to improve my equipment and pick up more current things that I don't have and some other things to review. So right now, it'll just be a Patreon to keep the channel going. I'll look at rewards and such for different tiers or whatever down the line. Right now, I'm just going to start it as a straight Patreon. I am interested in input from you. If there are suggestions of how I should tier the Patreon, or maybe I shouldn't tier the Patreon, maybe I should just leave it as it is, I'm very interested. Let me know. But that's enough about the Patreon right now. Steading the Hill Giant Chief, Module G1 from 1978/1981 on page 121. Before I go into today's video, I thought I'd show you the setup from last night's game. It was obviously in a swamp. There's a froghemoth, oh my gosh, a T-Rex, some neat little walk bridges. This was a 10th to 12th level group. Their idea was to get to the little shack there that has an extra dimensional space, and that was where the adventure was. So this is just a little layout I had, just of some subtropical swamp. Game was a lot of fun. Players were successful. I tore them up pretty good, but they managed to get out of the swamp alive. The swamp itself was almost as big an obstacle as any of the monsters I put in. That is a T-Rex. And my froghemoth. There were many others, of course. I just put these out here for the display. So I just wanted to show you that from last night. If you liked seeing the setups from the games I run, please let me know. Otherwise, I can stop doing them if it's something nobody's interested in. So just let me know if you like seeing these or not. Okay, back to today's regularly scheduled module. Steading of the Hill Giant Chiefs. This is the reprint of that module. This is from the Against the Giants reprint. The original Steading of the Hill Giant Chief was published in 1978, and this edition with G1, 2, and 3 together was published in 1981. It was an Origins 79 tournament module. There's the rather battered back showing the monochrome covers of the original 3. I love the Against the Giants series. It can be played as part of the larger Queen of the Spiders series, which was out in 85. This took all of the campaign modules from the Against the Giants, Descent to the Depths of the Earth, and the Queen of the Demon Web Pits, put them all together under one cover with some new artwork and just some links for modules that had come before. This is part of the series that linked it to Slave Lords and to Village of Hamlet. One of these days I may actually just take a look at these by themselves. But for today, we're going to take a look at Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. This is a fun adventure. You do need to be about an average 10th level. This module is written for levels 8 to 12. The steading can be very deadly. If you have good role players who are patient and planning, it can be a death trap for the giants. If you have impulsive types that run in and fight, it can be a wholesale slaughter. I have run Steading of the Hill Giant Chief probably more than any other module that I've ever run. I'm not huge on running modules, but I do run some of my favorites, and this would be one of those. I've also played in the Steading at least 3 different times. So this is a rare module that I have run multiple times and played in multiple times. I'm thinking only the Village of Hamlet would be able to make the same claim. So in here, we get the setup for the players. I'm only going to go, I'll show the whole setup for here. There's our module, the gatefold, the second gatefold. What's important to us is this. This is the Steading itself. So we have the upper level, which is where the giants are having their big feast and fee-fi-fo-fum and all that stuff. And then the lower level, where the slaves work and there's lots of torture going on. This was very old school. I love the artwork. That is so cool. I love the artwork in this. I love that depiction of the Steading, especially. That really kind of sets it home for me. This has been set in various places around Greyhawk over the years. I personally have used it as part of Ulick. I also stuck it in the Jotuns proper. And then, of course, I've used it over by the Christmas Mountains, the Hell Furnaces, in that area. It's supposed to be set in Sterich, which would have it in the Christmas Mountains. That's more from the Queen of Spiders. This doesn't really place it in any particular place, and I know that there are many online sources that tell you different locations for this. But the great thing is you can drop this adventure in anywhere you want. So we get the background, which is the giants have been raiding the land around their Steading, their newly established Steading, and the powers that be have said, all right, player characters, you're going to go out and you're going to defeat the giants, and if you don't, it's the headsman's block for you. Old D&D was fun, where the idea that was that the king could put you to death. Of course, most player characters are more powerful than an individual king, but still kind of fun. The first thing players are going to think to do on the Steading is burn it down. The first thing I remind them is, first off, it's a log structure, so it's not going to burn real well. And second, it's a newer log structure, which means that it's still of fresh timber, fresh-ish timber. It's not going to be susceptible to fire, even from a fireball. I've had a few groups that I've run try to just burn it down from the outside. That doesn't work, but it does draw a mammoth response from the giants within. I ran this at the old club that I've talked about so many times on my channel back in the early 80s. And I ran about 14 players in this, and I think about 6 walked out. This module is as lethal as you want to make it, and they were rather clumsy. They just kind of charged the big feast hall, and there, of course, are giants galore in there. There's some there are, of course, hill giants in there, but there's also some cloud giants, and there's all kinds of things in there, dire wolves. So it's not a good idea to walk in and just attack it. If you see here the picture, the player character is hiding under the cloak. That's the best way to take this. Come in subtly, try to find your way around. The module is written for that because what you're going to find is the giants are very cruel and don't care well for their servants. And the servants, and in some cases even the giants themselves, are going to be happy to help the player characters as long as it means they can get free from the brutish hill giants. So we're going through the main thing I usually do. I'll show the main hall, and you're coming in through here, and there's the main hall here, and then you've got some larger areas back there. A lot of times the players will scout the Steading, which I recommend, and then you see the main entrance, and then there's 2 side entrances. I've had players use all 3. This is the lethal one. Don't go straight into the Great Hall and just start kicking tail. You'll lose. I also ran this once, probably about 5 years ago, with player characters, old player characters in my campaign, very high level guys. We actually call them mega level. That's a catch-all for the ridiculous guys who should be retired, but we still like to take out now and again. Just as kind of a larf, I ran that group through a series of 10 adventures, starting with the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. They were way overpowered for the giant encounters, but the Vault of the Drow did give them some challenges. I ran them through each one of those. That ended up being one of my most successful campaigns, and it's one that the players at my table still talk about. That was just a lot of fun. Okay, so we have the various areas here. We've got the entry in the Cloakroom, which is where most players are going to come through. There's the tower, stairs going up to the tower, and then if you go into room 11, you get into the main hall. Again, not something I recommend. Love the artwork in this. So much artwork in this set the table for D&D for the next 10 years. As you see, this is a battered and used copy of the module, by the way. You see this tab of tape there and some circles. Those are not mine. Those belong to the GM who used to write and underline in his stuff before I acquired this from him. But I don't care. This is an old favorite of mine. I've had it for about 40 years, and it's not going anywhere in my collection. So basically we go through, if you do it subtly and quietly, this can be a pretty standard dungeon crawl. You can get from room to room, meet the opposition, and if you're strong enough, of course, eliminate it. If you blunder into the Great Hall, you meet King Noznra and his wife, his sub-chief, a cloud giant, 3 stone giants, 22 hill giants, 8 ogres, and a cave bear. Your average group, even at 10th, 12th level, is going to lose to that weight of fire. You're going to have to beef this up if you're playing AD&D rules using Unearthed Arcana, because obviously the hit points are a little low for weapon specialization and some of the other spells that came up during that. But if they blunder into the main hall, they're still going to lose. So coming through here, you're going to find couple of more interesting encounters. The kitchen workroom. You're going to find some orcs in there that are just tired of the giants. They've been beaten and dealt with badly from the giants, and they'll help the player characters insofar as they won't scream, and if the players promise to free them, they'll just leave. They won't make any fuss. They won't alert the giants. They'll just go. That's emblematic of this module. In this room, the barracks room, number 25, no, I'm sorry, that's just a guard room. That's not the one I wanted to talk about. There is a maid's chamber, area number 5, right there. The maid's chamber, there are 4 giantesses in the room, and only the old matron is the strongest of the 4, so she must be the 34 hit points, is inclined to fight. But she dominates the others. If the matron is slain, the 3 others will not fight and will even cooperate with the party by describing rooms 8, 9, and 10. Those are the chief's private rooms, and telling how to get there safely if the 3 are allowed the matron's hoard of treasure, which is an iron chest under the matron's bed. There are 3 bracelets worth 2,000, 8,000 gold pieces each, 3,000 gold pieces, some potions. Note that the maids do not particularly want the potions. This was written for the player characters to have the potions. I kind of like that. Then you go to the hall of the chief himself, the chamber of the chief's wife, the chief's chamber, and his arm room. The 5 javelins of lightning were very interesting. It was my first encounter with javelins of lightning as a player character. We put those to real good use when we did attack the Great Hall. We had weakened it. There weren't as many giants in there. We went for the Great Hall, and 2 of us stayed back and used the javelins of lightning to good effect, and then charged in with the rest. So we go back to the rest of the dungeon itself. If you attack the Great Hall straight on, as I said, you're going to lose. Especially, I use AD&D 2nd edition, the Monstrous Manual giants. They have more hit dice and more hit points. That makes this module more commensurate with Unearthed Arcana, but it also makes it more of a challenge. You come to the barracks rooms down here, which I did talk about a little bit, and then you go to the key to the dungeon level. The dungeon level is here. Now, I've run the dungeon level many, many times. This is not an area I spend a lot of time if I'm running this. This felt like it was just to kind of pad out the module to me. It's not an area that you encounter many giants. It loses some of the giant flavor. But there's still some pretty good encounters down here. One of the encounters that I've used to good effect was the elf. The elf fighter magic user. He's a 5th level fighter, 8th level MU, and he's wounded. He's been tortured. He's got 31 points, and he will work for any character with good for 1 year in payment for gratitude for his freedom. I've used him several different ways with different groups. In the one way, he's exactly as written. Another way, he was a doppelganger. The players had no real way to know it, and these were less experienced players, so they just took him at face value, and I wrought absolute havoc on the party. I did kill a few PCs with him. And then in others, he is exactly what he says he is, except he's evil. So there's a lot of different ways to use this guy. He's very interesting. I recommend fleshing him out if you're going to run this, because he can give you so many different adventures. So you're continuing on. There's a lot about the torture chambers and things like that. By the way, I don't use torture chambers in my D&D. I know it's historically correct. It's not something that adds to fun for me, for my game. My players are largely in agreement with me on this. I don't buy little gewgaws and figures for torture equipment, things like that. It's only my opinion. I try to keep D&D fun for everybody. I don't bog down in a lot of those kind of details. So one of the more interesting things you get into here, in a high-level module, you end up in a lizard lair and a troglodyte cavern. These are not as powerful, but there's a bunch of them. Again, if you're running a group around 10th level, it's been torn up a little bit before they get down here, this can be a real problem for them. And then you get to the Cavern of the Carrion crawlers. There are 2 in here now. I've actually put up to 8 in there, kind of the bug pit from King Kong. That can be a real challenge for players because, of course, with carrion crawlers, when they sting you, you have to save or be paralyzed. We come to the end where we're getting all the treasure, and we have getting to the treasure. We have quarters for the stone giant miners that are helping build out this area. And then we have a holding area for 4 insane manticores. And then we get to the secret room, which has spy holes so it can be looked upon, and then the chief's treasure room. And there's a hidden pit with a trapdoor with 4 spikes set into the floor. That was a common D&D trope. And then we get to the treasure room itself. The player characters get some pretty good stuff out of here. They get 11 plus 2 magic arrows, a plus 3 magic spear, 2 flaming swords. 1 is chaotic alignment of either good or neutral, intelligence 10, ego 12. It detects gems, including kind and number, and communicates by empathy. And 1 of neutral alignment, either good or lawful. So you can be neutral good or lawful neutral, sorry, with a 6 intelligence. Those intelligent swords, it's a video I think I'm going to do down the line, talking about intelligent weapons, not just swords, and how they can tremendously impact your campaign. The other thing of import that you find down here is you find a large chain, and this would be a giant-sized chain, which was funny because I confused it the first time. It's a chain of weird black metal and instructions written in Hill Giant. The instructions show that the chain is a magical device to be looped into a figure 8. Thus shaped, it will transport up to 6 persons standing in each circle of the figure 8 to the glacial rift of the frost giant Jarl, which is part 2 of this. So they'll magically transport from one to the other. It's pretty cool, especially if the players are impulsive, which one group was. They were very thrown up. Rather than take time to heal, they just stepped into the loops and found themselves near the glacial rift of the frost giant Jarl and had to do some creative play to find a place to hole up and heal up. So the next part of this series, I'm going to take a look at the glacial rift of the frost giant Jarl, and I'm going to continue through at least the against the giants. If you want me to do the entire series all the way through the Queen of the Demon Web Pits, I'd be interested in doing that. Just let me know. If you have any comments or criticisms, maybe some stories of how you dealt with these modules, please let me know. And going to be also introducing today, or I have introduced already, that there is a Patreon for my videos, and I encourage you to please take a look at the Patreon, and if you can, help keep this channel going. The Patreon right now will not have any specific rewards. It'll really just be a way to try to keep this channel going and keep me able to do these as much as I do. Down the line, I'll be taking suggestions and ideas for ways to improve the Patreon, improve the channel, and then maybe different advantages or the things for different levels of Patreon. I haven't decided that yet. Really, I'm looking largely for your input on that. But for right now, it's just going to be a Patreon to try to keep the channel up and running and enabling me to buy better equipment and things like that. So please take a look at it. If you can, help out. If you can't, no problem. Videos will still keep coming. And that's it for today for page 121, and I'll see you next time.